Welcome to Cast Your Bets, the Offshore Gaming Association podcast with your hosts Jim Quinn of OSGA.com and J.R. O'Donnell of Red Zone Sports. Let's get started.
Hello, folks, and welcome to Cast Your Bets. Jim here from OSGA.com with my good friend J.R. O'Donnell from Red Zone Sports and Pregame.com. Week 19 of the podcast, where we try to talk a little bit about how to bet some games, try to give you some angles, how to bet these games, how to look at these games, how to win some money, and put some money in your pocket. And we've had a pretty successful year. JR's had a nice year of picking games on the podcast. JR, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, my friend. I can't believe Week 19, divisional playoffs, had a super college football game to end the season there with Alabama obviously playing their hearts out. But I'm really looking forward this week to the divisional playoffs. Really love doing the podcast and really love putting some money in the listeners' pockets.
Absolutely, man. That was a heck of a football game that we watched there on Monday. Can't believe that kid missed that field goal at the end. It was one of those moments for me where I'm telling my friend I was watching the game with, well, this is either going to make this kid's life or he's going to be hated by everyone in Alabama as long as he lives. But they came back and they won that game. So, that was a heck of a football game.
It was a great football game, and I think it was a signature to the season. Saban gets the job done. It just goes to show you how Alabama just loads up every year. Nobody heard of that freshman quarterback, but that kid came out and he threw a laser, and he's going to make some noise down the road. And Alabama 3-1 to win the national championship next year, and hold on to your hats for college football next year.
But that's the end of the college football season. We've only got 7 games left in the NFL season. Here we have the divisional round. Next week we have the championship round, and then, of course, the Super Bowl there on the first weekend in February. JR, it's one of those times a year where if you're a bettor out there and you've got some money in your account, you start looking around at some other sports. Obviously we've got NBA, we've got NHL, we've got NCAA Basketball. You've got some golf starting up with some PGA. You got a lot of prop bets on these NFL games. With all the stuff that's on the board, it's almost too easy to lose money. And I want to start out by talking a little bit about betting on the NBA. I've always had a really hard time picking any NBA games until it gets to the playoff. Maybe it's a consequence of so many games each season, or, maybe when you're making, $40 million a year to play, it's a little tough to get up for every game. What are your thoughts on betting the NBA here, now that the NFL is starting to wind down?
Well, you make an excellent point there, because you don't get the true effort in the NBA that the college kids put out. In the NBA, there's scheduling, there's nights off, there's guys that have hidden injuries, and it's a tough go in the NBA. You got to be disciplined in the NBA. You have to pick your spots. You have to pick teams at home against teams on the road. But like I said, I can go into a lot of volumes and reams of that information. I don't do the NBA extensively as I should, because I do not like the guys taking off. But what I'm trying to say is you got to stay disciplined, and you make an excellent point. With the other sports going on out there and the true effort, you can stay away from the NBA, because that could be a terrible go if you're not prepared.
Yeah, and college basketball is something I've had a lot of fun playing over the years. It's probably one of my favorite sports to watch, actually. And I've made some money in college basketball, looking at some outside the box kind of conferences. Maybe I'm looking at the MAC or the Atlantic 10 or the Mid-American Conference. Missouri Valley Conference with Bradley and Drake are always some Valpo. There's always some good teams out there. I think the NCAA basketball is a spot where you can probably make some money while you're waiting for next football season to start. At least through March Madness, you can make some money.
College basketball is a true effort. The coaches are there for a reason. And those sub-conferences, those Mid-American conferences, teams like the Wichita States of the world, let me tell you, you can make some real money, because coaching in NCAA basketball is a big thing. Also, team trends, the home court advantage, you can really make some money. And I'm doing well in college basketball. You got to pick your spots. It is not easy. You have to pass the eye test with a lot of these teams. It's not easy to play some of these teams, because there's some ugly basketball out there, but the ugly and the unwanted basketball teams that give you the effort are the way to go. Try to stay away from the top 1, top 2, top 3 teams, laying 20, 21, 22 points. You need to stay away from that. You need to go nondescript. You need to go some of the conferences that are off the radar, and you need to really do your homework, and that's when a handicapper that does his homework comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the mistakes I made when I first started looking at college basketball was always looking at like the marquee game that was on, taking a look at North Carolina or Duke or Kansas or, some of the serious power teams. But then they're laying so many points, it makes it difficult to try and cash a ticket there. It's getting to the point where, You've got your top handful of teams, Nova, West Virginia, Michigan State's in there again this year. Duke, of course, is always in there. Xavier's got a really good team this year. We're not that far away from March Madness from the NCAA Basketball tournament. Is it time to start taking stock of some of these teams so that you can kind of file, even if you're not betting it, you can file it away so when the tournament comes, you can fire away?
Absolutely. Another great point, because you want to look at some of the tough conferences, not obviously the Dukes that are going to be there and the Kansases, and obviously, there's going to be the big name teams there, but you want to go with some of the smaller teams that can play. Cincinnati's a great team that plays defense. Arizona had a subcontract year. Arizona had 3 losses right out of the gate, but now they're healthy, and they have won 9 or 10 in a row. Arizona, Cincinnati, College of Charleston has all 5 starters back, and I'm telling you right now, we'll be doing a podcast with March Madness, and those guys will be in the mix, as that is one great team that nobody knows of. College of Charleston, boys, look at those guys hard.
Nice, man. That's what happens when you get up at 3 a.m. and have reams of paper to go through. You find the College of Charleston. I don't even know. What's the team name? Do you know the team name for College of Charleston?
I don't know the team name of College of Charleston, but they're going to be a high seed, and I'll give you another one. The Cincinnati Bearcats are going to go deep into the tournament, and they are a well-coached team. They are nasty. They play great defense. Cincinnati, a nondescript team. Nobody wants anything to do with them, but they're going to go deep also. I love the Cincinnati Bearcats.
Nice, man. That's a couple of little tidbits right there. That's what we're trying to give out each and every week here on Cast Your Bets. Some stuff that you probably are going to be listening in the coming weeks over at pregame.com. Now, that brings us to kind of the last big sport, which is the NHL. The NHL is a sport that kind of really gets pushed to the side. Even the commissioner of the NHL has come out and said that the game itself doesn't really lend itself to betting. From what I hear, it's less than 5% of total handle. But I know you had made a bunch of money on a hell of a run there in the NHL, and I know some guys who were out there betting NHL too. Is that a misnomer that maybe it's not meant for betting or there's no money to be made there?
Well, nobody likes the NHL, as you're right, 5% or less of the handle. But the NHL is a real selective sport. It's almost like a niche or a niche sport where the people are crazy for the NHL. And even if you're winning, you could be 10, 11, 12 in a row, but nobody wants to play the NHL. They just kind of put it as the ugly stepchild. You can make some money. Now, the new rules this year are in favor of team scoring, as the over is almost a 60 to 62% scoring rate, because the commissioner put some rules in there and they want people to put pucks in the net. A lot of people are playing the overs, and rightfully so, but never did you see games like 4-3, 5-4. Last night, Chicago Blackhawks won 8-2. You got to admit, when you were looking at the Flyers there on Broad Street, there was never 8-2 games. But this year, the pucks are flying, the overs are coming in, and I'm crushing the NHL. And that's right. Pick your spots and play some of these teams. You can make some real money if you're selective in the NHL.
Yeah, and there's another interesting aspect of betting the NHL that I always kind of look at with, like a skewed kind of eye, because I don't know if there's any value in it, and it's the same kind of deal that they use with soccer betting, which, of course, is the biggest bet sport in the world, where there's the puck line where you can actually bet the tie. Is that something even worth looking at, or is that another gimmick that, sucks in guys who, like me, who really aren't fully aware of what they're doing out there sometimes?
That is a gimmick to me. I've did a lot of extensive research in there, and I don't bet that. And you're right, soccer is the most gambled sport in the world, obviously, as soccer takes the forefront. And I certainly don't do soccer as maybe I should, but believe me, I have my hands full with what's going on now. But to answer your question, that is a gimmick with betting the tie. The puck line, obviously, the -1.5 or +1.5, that usually plays into it. But you know what? You got to lay such tremendous odds. If you lay or grab 1.5, you got to lay 230, 240, 250, and you can't make any money doing that.
Yeah, that's a serious recipe for disaster, and it's a mistake a lot of guys make. That 1.5 looks really big in a hockey game. So they tend to not maybe look at those odds and see what that's really costing them there to get that extra, puck of goal going in the net. So yeah, that's maybe something to stay away from there. Hey, just want to let the listeners know out there that there are other sports to bet. As long as you do some research and figure out what you're doing rather than just betting blindly because you happen to have some money in your bankroll and football's ending or football ended and you haven't cashed out yet. It's one of those things where it might be some time to turn and look at a handicapper. JRO, you post a bunch of stuff. You said you don't really do much NBA, but you're over there at pregame.com, and once these 7 football games end, I guess you'll be loading up a little on college basketball?
Absolutely. I spend a lot of time on college basketball because you got to find the edges. When I give out the games with my college basketball service and they don't even know who the team is, or when they call their guy and the guy doesn't even know who it is, that's when you know you have a winner. You stay away from Michigan State. You stay away from Duke. You stay away from Ohio State. You play teams like Portland State. You play teams like Quinnipiac University. I'm telling you, you turn some eyebrows and you raise some eyebrows, but those are the teams that you have information on, and those are the solid teams that you need a handicapper that knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and I figured out the College of Charleston is the Cougars. So I think it's a word to the wise right there. I mean, you don't necessarily need to know a whole lot about where, obviously with the College of Charleston, it's probably in Charleston, but you don't need to know where East Carolina is, or South Florida. You just need to know the odds and how that team's playing. And like you say, a lot of what goes on with college basketball for me is how much senior leadership do they have. You don't have many teams coming along like that Michigan Fab 5 team, back in the early 90s that managed to do it with 5 freshmen. I think it's very important for people, if they're going to bet these off sports, to do a little extra homework. Maybe go over to pregame.com and look at J.R. O'Donnell. Maybe do a little extra work so they don't get burned by just blindly betting Duke. It's some good stuff there, JR. And that's the college game we're talking about. Just like we had that last college football game, on Monday night. Time to look at some futures for college football, or do you sit and wait on something like that?
Well, some of the futures for college football is really tough for me. I sit and wait a little bit because of obviously the freshmen and recruiting classes. Sometimes the coaches are going to go away. But, to answer your question, I would love to tell the listeners, but I'm not jumping on any futures right now. I'm going to let the dust settle.
That's a good point. They put those numbers out, and you don't even know who's going to be the starting quarterback for half these teams next year. That's a really good point. And those numbers were out like 3 seconds after Alabama won. It was pretty funny. My phone was lighting up. Folks, we're going to be back here in a very short period of time. Listen to a little message from our Offshore Gaming Association.
The offshore betting industry is totally unregulated.
Where can you turn to make sure your money is safe offshore?
The Offshore Gaming Association, OSGA. Visit the Offshore Gaming Association at www.osga.com or call them toll-free 7 days a week at 877-OSGA-BET. That's 877-674-2238. Established in 1998, the OSGA has been the ultimate watchdog for the unregulated offshore betting industry. They have helped thousands of players find secure, reputable offshore wagering outlets and perform dispute resolution for hundreds of wronged players. Visit the Offshore Gaming Association at www.osga.com or call them toll-free at 877-OSGA-BET.
Folks, welcome back here to Cast Your Bets. Don't forget, every week you can find us out on iTunes. You can find us on a very popular podcasting site, blueberry.com. Of course, we're always listed out on osga.com. And we put together a nice video presentation of this. If you want to take a look over on YouTube, search under OSGA Sports Betting. Jim from OSGA here with J.R. O'Donnell from Red Zone Sports. JR, there's only 7 football games left. There's only 8 teams left. So it's time for me to say, let's look at an NFL Super Bowl winner here. I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm not saying for the listeners to go out there and put 2 fists worth of money on it. Gun to the head. Who you liking to win the Super Bowl?
I like the Minnesota Vikings and their defense. I like Case Keenum as a functional quarterback, but I like Minnesota. We talked a little bit off the air. You know that I like offense to put people in the seats, but Minnesota has defense, and that covers the spread. They have the top 5 defenses in 5 categories, and Minnesota's the real deal. Anybody that has to go through Minnesota is going to be tough. Gun to my head, Minnesota wins the Super Bowl.
Wow, that's really messed up because they're playing the Saints this week, and, I've been kind of riding the Drew Brees bandwagon for a while, and I mentioned those 2 running backs, the very first podcast we had, and I've been following them all season long. And, for me, I like the Saints. I think that the Saints are having one of those magic runs. Brees has really got it going. The 2-headed monsters at tailback that they employ there are just lighting it up for them. Minnesota's going to be tough this week, but, I'm going to make my pitch for the New Orleans Saints to come out of nowhere and take a look at winning the Super Bowl. One of the reasons I like them is they're 6-1 to win the Super Bowl. Your Vikings are at 7-2, and of course, the New England Patriots are everybody's favorite at 7-4 to win the Super Bowl. So a couple weeks out, I think it's interesting to take a look, and it's probably the last time you're going to get any good value on any of these teams to put a future bet in. What are your thoughts about looking at putting a future in now, regardless of whether you're looking at the Patriots at 7-4 or the Titans at 40-1? What are your thoughts on a little future betting right now?
Well, you're right. If you're going to be disciplined with the future betting, certainly you're not going to throw your money away on a 40-1 Titans. But if you like New Orleans, if you like Minnesota, I don't know about the Patriots at 7-4, but there's some value. Like you said, this week the value is going to be there. It's going to go out the window after this week's games as the dust's going to settle. But if you want to play them teams with your heart, obviously, and hey, New Orleans, nobody's going to fault you for New Orleans. They got Drew Brees with a top-rated offense, and those two running backs, Kamara and Ingram, are both super. We talked about that earlier. But anyway, now is the time for value. It diminishes after this week.
I know you like Case Keenum, but I'm pretty sure Drew Brees is completing over 70% of his passes for the second season in a row, man. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, by the time this podcast has been listened to, it'll be Monday, and one of us will look like a genius, probably you, and one of us will be crying in his soup, probably me. Seven games left, 8 teams left. Some interesting games this weekend, the Falcons and the Eagles. It looks to me like the entire planet is suddenly on the Eagles for some reason. That game is kind of scary. New England's given 13.5. That'll probably be 2 touchdowns by the time it goes off. The New Orleans-Minnesota game is just a tough game. I think you're going to probably talk about the Jacksonville and Pittsburgh game here, because to me, that's one of the only games on the board where there's any value.
Absolutely. If it's a great segue to coming in here. I'm going to go ugly this weekend. Obviously, I'm going to play the non-sexy team. As I think Marone and the Jacksonville Jaguars can play some defense. Last week, ugly nail-biter, 10-3 against Buffalo. Nobody wanted any part of that game. But let me tell you, Jacksonville put up 34.5 points the last 4 games previous to that clunker with the 10 points, and they can play some defense. They have a fast sideline-to-sideline defense. Pittsburgh's without Shazier, and everybody in the world is looking for Big Ben after 5 interceptions. That's right. 5 interceptions the first game against Jacksonville. They embarrassed the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, Steelers are obviously a great team. Their wide receivers coming back, which really concerns me a little bit. But I think 7.5 is some value there. Obviously, less than a touchdown, I would not play the game. But getting 7.5 or 8 points with the Jacksonville Jaguars in an ugly, low-scoring game here, I think you're going to play the dog. I like Jacksonville with Bortles, who actually ran the ball for 75 yards last week, and they have a tough defense. Marone plays defense. Their sideline to sideline is fast. They got great cover secondary, and I think they can go toe-to-toe. They can trade punches with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they can cover the 7.5. I'm going ugly. I'm going effective. They run the ball. Leonard Fournette had a great season we talked about off the air, and he's going to be an effective back. Pittsburgh will win the game, but Jacksonville will cover the 7.5.
Well, it's one of those revenge-type games, I guess, because the Steelers got crushed by the Jags back in Week 5. The Jags won 30-9, and I'm pretty sure that's the game where Ben Roethlisberger came out and kind of was whining a little bit like, I've got to play better or retire almost. So Jacksonville might be one of these teams that has the Steelers' number. Their defense is very solid, and that is an attractive number once you get past that touchdown. I think players are probably going to have to get on that pretty soon because you can't be the only guy looking at the Jags D here, man.
Yeah, you know what? Pittsburgh also, and I'm not certainly a stats and trends guy, but one thing that jumped out through my 75,000 reams of paper is Pittsburgh is 2-5 against the spread as 7 or more points in the playoffs. 2-5. 7 or more points as a chalk. That's not a very good profit. Now, I realize that I'm not a stats and trends player, but I certainly like the right side of that one. 2-5 as a home favorite or as a favorite of 7.5 or more.
Yeah, and frankly, the Steelers haven't really been lighting it up. I mean, they beat the Bengals 23-20. They beat the Ravens by a single point. Then they went and lost to the Patriots. Then they came back and they kind of crushed the Texans there, and then ended up this season with, playing like the Eagles did, like it was a preseason game, and they beat the Browns, which isn't saying much. But the last 4 or 5 games, the Steelers haven't really shown a whole lot, and I think it's one of those. You were hoping Roethlisberger was going to have a magic season. Maybe he's going to retire or whatnot. But I think that it's one of those cases where the time is ripe. Jacksonville's not scared. And it looks like with Fournette, and they've got some younger players. They're super hungry there, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I like this play, JR. We're going to write it down at Jacksonville plus 7.5 and urge players to get on that. Take a look. That line might be, fluid a little bit, and, maybe some Pittsburgh money will come in a little later, and you'll get 8. Which would really be a home run. I'd love 8, man.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's a public team. I don't think the line's going to drop. If it does go below 7.5, I'm certainly not going to come on here next week if something happens and say, I told you to get off it. But I love Jacksonville plus the 7.5 or 7. If it goes below a touchdown, I've got some big worry there.
Yeah. What's one of the things that starts to mean the public's all over that game, and that's always a scary situation. Like we're seeing what's happening with Philadelphia right now. Where the public just seems to really think that they're gonna do something here as home dogs. So let's write that down, folks. Go over to your computer, pull your phone out, click the button, take Jacksonville plus 7.5 as JRO's NFL Division free pick of the week, and that's a hot play right there. One of the things we try to do every week is talk a little bit about what we hear on our phone lines. And JR, I know I'll probably sound like a little bit of a broken record here, because we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. But I had a guy just on our chat the other day, 2 days ago. He's got $2,000 in his sports book, and he's wondering what he should do. I asked him on the chat, how much are you betting on an average game? He said 200. I said, take some money out. To me it was, and he acted like I was telling him something he'd never heard before. He was going to wait until after the Super Bowl. Folks, it's very important. Once you get past the Super Bowl, more than half of the customers draw their money out, which is going to cause a delay in even the best places in terms of getting your money out. There's all kinds of different ways to get paid today, too, that didn't exist a year ago that you probably are going to need to explore if you're like this fellow and you got a couple of $1,000. Western Union, MoneyGram, they're a couple of $100 at best anymore. It's just one of those things where if you're smart about what you're doing and you've been using bankroll management all season long, you don't want to get stuck here at the end of the year. I mean, JR, you've heard the horror stories where guys just pack up and roll right after the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. The best advice on this show, besides those free picks and besides the content, is obviously take that money out. Nobody wants to wait till after the Super Bowl, and stand in that line of 100 or 200 people. You want to get some out now so you're comfortable. Besides, you're going to go crazy, and it's going to be undisciplined if you have a lot of money in there with a Super Bowl. There's got to be 150 prop bets, and I'll give you some great prop bets, but you don't want to play 30 or 40 prop bets and eat your whole bankroll up with that silliness.
Yeah, and I've seen it happen with guys. It's kind of like, well, here I am at the end of the season. I might as well just play whatever's in my account on these last few games, and suddenly a guy who's $100 or $200 better is betting, $500. Although if he's taking the Jags, man, it might not be that bad a play. But very, very, very important thing to listen to, folks, is it's the time of year where you don't want to get caught. You don't want to have to wait in line. You don't want to get caught with a place that might, be a little less than honest and disappear on you. And it's time to get a little bit of money out, stick some of that in your pocket. That's the word on the street here from OSGA, and I hope that fellow out on chat is listening to me right now and takes that to heart. JRO, we've got games coming up here. We've got college basketball. We've got NHL. You've got it all out on pregame.com. We can find you over there, by just looking for J.R. O'Donnell, right?
Yeah, just go to pregame.com. It's a great website. It's got a chat room. It's got forums. It's got the lines. And I can hang my hat anywhere, but I'm on pregame.com. Just search J.R. O'Donnell. You see me with my sunglasses. I'm there every day. I'm up early. Like I said, some people obviously say they're up early, but listen, you guys know it's the truth. I've been doing this 23 years, and I've been doing this devoted, and I'm excited about this. I get revved up about this stuff. Nobody's more excited than me. J.R. O'Donnell, pregame.com.
That's fantastic, man. A great site, and I'm glad you got on there a few years ago because they do a nice job over there. And I know you're at the top of the leaderboard in a couple of sports, which is fantastic. You can always find me, Jim, over at osga.com. Got a wealth of information out there on sports books, betting. If you can become a member out there, that's fantastic. That keeps us in business. JRO fires out a member play every week for our members. And it's just a site that if you're going to bet offshore, take some time, head over to osga.com, take a look around before you send your money to one of these offshore joints. Folks, another week of Cash Your Bets in the can here. We look forward to hearing from you, taking a look out there on YouTube, taking a look out there on iTunes, Blueberry.com, and at OSGA. And as always, here at Cast Your Bets, we wish you good luck and look forward to seeing you again next week.
You've been listening to Cast Your Bets, the Offshore Gaming Association podcast. Check in each week for more inside the sports gaming world. And don't forget to check us out on your favorite social media site and on our YouTube channel at OSGA Sports Betting. Thanks for listening.